Hey, good evening, everyone. It's CJ. Hopefully, everyone had a fantastic day. It is Monday, March the 21st, and see the chat room is active already. Raven6, what's up? Hopefully, the title was not misleading. Joe Rogan is not here. I know many of you knew that. Sky Queen, I did not fall asleep. Not on this stream. Maybe the next one. You never know. Mojo, what's up? What's in the house? Village guy, too many cookies. Yeah, maybe too much tequila. Actually, no. Tonight, I'm since it's Rogan and having just a little bit of a bourbon tonight. Oops, ooh, there we go. Yeah. So a little Buffalo Trace. Appreciate you guys joining the stream. Decided to do this. This is the first attempt to do what I'm calling reaction videos. London Paul and I talked a while back that there's so much disinformation, everything coming out, and you see a lot of podcast commentary and stuff, and sometimes it's good to discuss it and to share the ideas with that's in the information, but then at the same time to be able to not only just what maybe is questionable, but at the same time what was good about the podcast. And I know everyone's here is very familiar with reaction videos, right? Most of the time people do it to music videos when they do the reactions, but mine is going to be based upon media, both good information and what I will label disinformation. Before we jump in, cheers, Sky Queen, absolutely. Medina Rose is in the house. Sorry, I always pronounce that wrong. So it's the news cycle is always constant, very fast, everything that's moving. But before we jump into kind of reviewing and discussing the interview that Joe had with Mike Baker, I wanted to talk a little bit around the entire Hunter Biden laptop that many of our listeners already are very familiar with. And I think there's something that's missing, and you guys hear me say this quite often, is that as information is released, one of the things I always like to do is to take a look at the timing of it, and why is this coming out? Why is this being picked up by the mainstream media now? And for the most part, it is being reported pretty consistently. I think it was with the New York magazine that what's that, Matthew? That first released the actual confirmation that the laptop was real, and which we already knew. And I believe that the particular timing of why that laptop and why that story is being pushed again is because in my opinion, again, I don't have any proof or anything like that. This is speculation, but I believe what they're doing is attempting to leverage that against Joe Biden. And you say, well, why do you say that? We always say, Rogue and also Gadfly, that we know he's not the one making the decision, pulling the strings. But at the same time, Joe Biden, two different people. Joe Biden at this point has been very reluctant to advance any type of escalation directly with Russia in the Ukraine. I'll give you a couple of examples. So the first example is that he said, that we will not put U.S. military boots on the ground. We're not going to do that. Also, we're not going to do a no-fly zone because that puts us pretty much at direct war with Russia. And I think that's counter to what the people that are managing Joe Biden really truly want. They want this escalate. They want this move forward. If you remember, dating back to when Donald Trump was in office, they did the same thing to him. Everyone remembers the assassination of General Soleimani, Iranian general, which I'm not sure if Trump even gave the green light on that. He very well could have. That's pretty bold move. The assassination of a top general in no military in terms of what transpired. But everyone remembers what happened after that. The counteraction to the assassination was there was a military base outlet that was struck in Iraq. Everyone remembers that. Iran launched several missiles, took out a good portion of the base. There's a lot of speculation that they gave advance notice that, hey, here's what we're going to do. But this is why we're doing it. And literally, I really think we were at the brink of war with Iran right then. And I truly believe that they were leveraging and trying to push Trump to say, this is our moment. This is, they reacted, and we want to escalate things with Iran right now, and Trump wouldn't pull the trigger. And hence the reason why he's no longer in office. Is it the same military industrial complex, the same mechanisms of corporate America, the same people who promote these things, the real people, the George Carlin always says, the real people who control things, make those decisions, not the voting. So I think for that particular reason that, and everyone knows what, Trump, they came after him a long time, and everyone knows I don't get too much into a lot of the political thing, but I think in this example, everyone's coming forth and saying, yeah, the Biden story, the Hunter Biden story. And I firmly believe they're using that information to go, target Joe to say, hey, listen, we need you to play ball here. We need you to play ball, because if not, we're going to, continue this with your family, and your son is going to be in our crosshairs of potential arrest, criminal investigation, which I'm not defending. I think it's warranted, right? I think it's warranted with Joe as well. But I think that's why they're leveraging. That's why the information the media is coming out with that story now is they're trying to push that in the spotlight and push the administration into green lighting and yes, Raven. So ramp up the conflict, or Hunter takes the fall. Something of that nature. Yes, that potential. Again, just speculation here. I have no proof of it, but I just question the timing of it, right? I really question the timing, and I said the same thing whenever the District 9 out of New York, whenever they issued the arrest and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein, of the timing of that, and that was leveraged to manage a lot of people in DC during that time period, and the counteraction was to eliminate that completely, where he was basically executed in jail. So that's my thought on that. I just wanted to get that out there. It was just one topic, so I didn't feel the need to do a whole stream about it. But the primary reason of jumping into tonight's conversation is in regards to the most recent JRE that he had with let me bring this in, with Mike Baker. And I've noticed this a few times now, that there's a few individuals, we many of you, I can't remember the gentleman's name, maybe someone in the chat can help me out with this, but there was a gentleman that came apparently out of the CIA with the entire UFO narrative. He was blowing the whistle, and all this stuff was going to happen, and he worked with the gentleman from Blink 182, and I believe it was the dark journalist who came out and said, listen, they're putting this information out there on purpose. This is the deep state attempting to put people out there who potentially still have the connections with many of the alphabet agencies and the direction to manage them. And people are going to ask, well, why would they do that? Well, think about what's happening to the legacy media. The legacy media is losing a considerable amount of viewers. They're losing a considerable amount of trust with people in general. So I think what's happening now is I think we're seeing a few individuals purposely put out into the podcast world who potentially could be controlled opposition's narrative. I'm not saying Joe Rogan. I'm saying specifically Mike Baker. He has some type of TV show or something that he promoted in this. I can't remember what show it's on, but it would make perfect sense, right? Especially to get someone that Joe Rogan likes, someone that has the experience, the background. Mike Baker is a former CIA covert operations officer and currently CEO of Portman Square Group, a global intelligence firm. He also is a host of Black Files Declassified on Discovery and the Science Channel. So wouldn't it make sense to purposely, like if you're going to put some information out, is to build that trust and then get people like Mike Baker out into the public to get the ideas of the information that they want purposely put out there. And because they know they're not going to get they already have it in the news media, right? They already have that in the media. We know that as well. CNN, Fox News, they have their controlled language, the narratives, the information that they put out. So how do you counter that with podcasts, especially platforms like Rogan's? You have, yes, Medina, subversion, absolutely subversion, and putting these people out there to purposely get the narrative and the story that they want built. So again, that's complete speculation on my part. Something that perhaps in the Rogue Discord server, perhaps we can continue that conversation. Maybe even Velas would have something to say about that. But let's go ahead and let's jump into this conversation that Joe has with, again, Mike Baker. And this is covered under fair use. We're going to be talking a little bit about this. I got certain time marks that I want to jump into, but let's just go ahead and let's start it out now. I need to make sure I have the sound on real quick. Yep, sound is on. Okay, here we go. And I don't have any sound. For some reason, it is muted. Let me find it real quick. It's here somewhere. I know that it is. Not muted there. Here it is.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there?
Putin,
in that statement.
The Putin thing scares the shit out of me, though, because he's when it comes to warlords, he's a legitimate warlord.
Yeah.
Who is in charge of, I didn't know that they had more nukes than us. I mean, I guess it's kind of a moot point, right? Because everybody's got everybody's got enough to kill everybody. How many times over?
Yeah.
Isn't it something crazy like 10 times over?
Yeah, they did the math and it was in double digits.
It's not good.
It's not good, but it's, look, if you step back, everybody's thinking, okay, how did this fucked up situation happen? Well, it's been building, obviously, right? I mean, how much news coverage did we have of, well, they're adding more troops to the border with Ukraine. Wonder what they're doing. Could it be military exercises? So there was a tremendous amount of speculation leading up to what the fuck is going on, which in a sense points to how lacking the intelligence is on Putin, on plans and intentions, right? And that's a heavy lift, right? To come up with that sort of intel, because ideally you're going to want a human source. You can get SIGINT, you can get whatever, you can gather intelligence from a variety of sources, but you really want human access, people who can tell you, you know what, I had a meeting with him and boy, I tell you what, he was pissed off. Or
I need to back this up for just a minute. I went too far forward on my timestamp. Here we go.
If you think about the folks in that age group, she was born, she was old enough to understand 9/11. Right, in a sense, from a child's perspective, and then through the Iraq, Afghanistan, bullshit. That whole time with the war on terrorism, a couple of recessions, global pandemic, now approaching Cold War 2.0, getting close to thermonuclear war. Not that we are,
and the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan,
and Afghanistan, inflation possibly leading to recession.
$7 a gallon gas in California.
People of that age, not able to save money for a house, they must just be thinking, what the fuck? Where's our big buildup? Where's our the 50s or the 80s?
Well, it just seems so supremely incompetent. Everything seems like whoever the grown-ups are that are running the show have fucked up so many different things.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? In that statement.
The Putin thing scares the shit out of me, though, because he's when it comes to warlords, he's a legitimate warlord.
Yeah. Who
is in charge of, I didn't know that they had more nukes than us. I mean, I guess it's kind of a moot point, right? Because everybody's got everybody's got enough to kill everybody. How many times over?
Yeah.
Isn't it something crazy like 10 times over?
Yeah, they did the math and it was in double digits.
It's not good.
It's not good, but it's, look, if you step back, everybody's thinking, okay, how did this fucked up situation happen? Well, it's been building, obviously, right? I mean, how much news coverage did we have of, well, they're adding more troops to the border with Ukraine. Wonder what they're doing. Could it be military exercises? So there was a tremendous amount of speculation leading up to what the fuck is going on, which in a sense points to how lacking the intelligence is on Putin, on plans and intentions, right? And that's a heavy lift, right? To come up with that sort of intel, because ideally you're going to want a human source. you can get SIGINT, you can get whatever, you can gather intelligence from a variety of sources, but you really want human access, people who can tell you, you know what, I had a meeting with him and boy, I tell you what, he was pissed off, or this is what he said, or this is how he looked. Without that, without knowing what plans and intentions are, or, being able to gather intel on, say, the command staff, everybody was kind of speculating.
Pause it there for a minute. He at the very beginning of this, he had a Freudian slip here when they first started this conversation, and this was down to my notes. You'll catch it. You'll hear it here at the beginning. So,
Joe Rogan podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
Mike Baker, are we fucked?
Mr. Rogan, we are fucked.
This is not good, right? This is not good.
How much fun is this? Every time we get together, there's some
It seems like
bullshit happening.
Yeah. Every time the world is somewhat falling apart.
Yeah. Well, it's good for business. I didn't mean that.
did you hear that? It's good for business, right? War and the escalation. It's good for business. That's the right thing. That's what we want. That's the intention. Overall, the conversation went as anticipated. There was, a little bit off, just some, again, Joe on the censorship, we're already very familiar with that in terms of the news, the media. But this is one part also that I wanted to jump into specifically. I need to fast forward to the hour mark. It looks like my screen goes way. Yeah, it's good for business. Absolutely. It's good for business. So here we go. This is the part right here.
We kind of overlook the obvious in terms of why he acts the way he does. Part of this is when he came into power, nobody really gave him any thought, right? And he'd been a deputy mayor in Leningrad, and he showed up. He proved himself fairly capable, got himself tight with Yeltsin, was appointed as head of the FSB, the old KGB, the domestic service, and
FSB is the new version of the KGB.
Yeah. And so he sort of found himself in this position, rising to the top. And one of the first things he did, which surprised a lot of people, was he reined in the oligarchs, supposedly, right? He called them all together and he says, fuck you. He took over media companies. He understood the importance of shutting down, media that was possibly in opposition to him as he grew in strength, reined them in. And, there's really been, other than Khodorkovsky, there's been really nobody that's gotten out of line over all these years. Now, one of the things the oligarchs did in exchange was, help essentially manage money on his behalf. And now what's happened recently since the Ukrainian invasion of Ukraine is that some of these guys, Mikhail Friedman, Avin, who else? Abramovich, they've come out and they haven't criticized Putin directly, but they've criticized the war, said, no, we shouldn't be doing this. We got to stop this. We got to stop the bloodshed, stop this. We shouldn't be fighting the Ukrainians. That, as an example, it really sets Putin off, right? Because he's like, fuck you. I made you. In his mind, he made them.
Right.
In their minds, they're thinking, no, fuck nut. Fuck knuckle, to use a name. They made him, or they made him the wealthiest guy.
Right.
And so there's this other element. And again, you're always trying to piece together why the fuck, because you're trying to, again, beaver down into say, okay, what are his plans and intentions? What's he going to do next? To know that, you gotta get inside his head. And so part of this is understanding why he's doing things and why he's thinking. So anyway, then he comes out and he says, fuck you and your villas. I don't mind you having villas. Well, of course not, because he's got some really nice places, right? Spread around.
Doesn't he have some gigantic billion-dollar castle that he's sort of denied owning, but they do believe that he has it?
Oh yeah.
There was some newspaper report on it. It's this massive compound.
His assets are remarkable, right? And a lot of them are very well hidden. In part because he's used these smart guys who spend a lot of time hiding their own money, right? And so, anyway, this point is Putin just kind of went off. Right?
So that's what he's going off about. He's going off about these oligarchs.
In part, and he's also had some of the military command and come out and express concern. There's some anecdotal evidence. It's again the intel, solid intel. It's not as good as we'd like, but there's anecdotal evidence that there's an increasing amount of discomfort within the command structure and within his security services.
Okay, fair enough. Let's say that that Putin's a several times over billionaire, all this kind of stuff. So fair enough that that's the case. But again, it would be nice to have a counter narrative to talk about Zelensky and the corruption that he's had with the oligarchs in Ukraine. Was it the Pandora Papers that exposed that whenever Zelensky first was put into office, that he raided the Bank of Ukraine for the tune of $1.6 billion that was placed in an offshore account, and that was fully disclosed. What about the counter narrative there? And it's just one sided. Baker's coming at it from the perspective of anti-Russia, anti the action that's taking place, and I'm fine with that. That's fair enough. But to have the conversation and talk about what Putin did, how he became a billionaire, and he quelled he went back from who was the former president of Russia, from when they broke down the Russia, and they basically gave control of most of all the industry to these oligarchs, and Putin did rein that in. And so, there was probably wealth that was accumulated for a lot of people during that time period. But to look at it, to give a perspective, especially as large of an audience that Rogan has, to not talk about the corruption, the vast corruption in Ukraine, right? All of our listeners are familiar with it. We've done several podcasts breaking it down, talking about those things, just very one-sided, one-sided in terms of, hey, let's look over here, but don't look over there. And I think, again, it kind of leads me to believe that, he's a plant. He's specifically put into these podcasts and these platforms. I'm not going to keep saying that because, again, that's just my theory. No facts about that, but let's let this conversation continue.
Said, this is the wrong. We shouldn't have done this. This is the wrong tact. Where is this going? It's impacting the Russian people in a big way. He's fucking over the Russian population, right? He's creating this situation where, he's isolating the country, right? And he's really putting them as sort of the, he's almost creating a situation. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here with China, where China is going to start looking at Russia the same way they look at North Korea, which is, for fuck's sake, we got to take care of these people now, right? We're going to be the ones supplying. Now, China looks at this and goes, yeah, fine. And for the time being, while it looks like they look at Russia like it's a Costco now. We can get oil and gas, on the cheap, because the price is discounted now because there's not a lot of buyers, or there's fewer buyers. Agricultural products, minerals. So China's looking at it like a place where they can go. They don't look at Russia as an equal, right? They don't look and think, oh, we gotta rise to the top, and one of the things we have to do is get past Russia. They've already done that, right? But I think Putin he's strategically overreached here, and he also doesn't understand how that relationship works, right? He's imagining somehow that he's on par with China and that they're going to have this relationship. Xi is only going to work with Russia and maintain relatively close ties for as long as it's in China's interest. That's it.
You don't think Putin knows this?
He seems to have been mistaken on a number of things when it comes.
Are you kidding me? So now, hey, what's up, Crypto King? So now Mike Baker knows the full intention of the relationship between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. He doesn't see that China's in for the long play in regards to how this is playing out. He's putting a narrative there, and it's interesting he pivoted to China right away in this conversation, because we're also starting to see that in the news as well, quite a bit, very significant. There's other videos that I've bookmarked and saved that I watched, and they're talking about doing some crazy things like, hey, we need to look at what happened in Ukraine and get ahead of Taiwan and start putting more weapons there and put troops there, in preparation for the escalation that they want. I mean, people are just talking some crazy stuff right now, right? I mean, that's just what's up, Texan Tom Payne. Welcome to the live stream. But for him to not understand, it would be nice for him to have a counter narrative, maybe a Pepe Escobar, to come on, or maybe even the Saker, to talk about the long-term play to help, have a different narrative of what's being played here with Mike Baker, former CIA, counterintelligence officer that supposedly understands the relationship that Russia and China have, better understands it than Putin does. And we know, obviously, he didn't read the letter that was produced from the last meeting that they had that specifically talked about the relationship and the long-term strategy. So I'm not sure what his efforts are there to really kind of break that down from a various perspectives, and really just a huge disconnect on his part for him to say that China's looking at this as a short term, that once that Russia, we hear that time and time again that, oh no, there's no alliance there. This isn't taking place. That's like a mainstream narrative that they keep pushing out. And we know better. The people that listen to the work that I do with Rogue, also on the Gadfly, specifically know about the long-term plans that have been drawn up, and they're very much out to change the dynamics of what's happening in the world economies for trade. So let's continue this conversation.
Comes to assessment of the situation with Ukraine. So you got to wonder, how good is the information reaching him? How isolated is he? And so this understanding of the relationship between he and Xi, I think Xi's looking at this and going, this is a great opportunity for us right now. Now, if it gets uglier in Ukraine, if things really, really get ugly, then I think you're going to see some daylight between, Xi's going to look and go, okay, politically, economically, it's now in our interests to create some space there, right? And they're not going to change their situation with Russia because we threaten them with sanctions. Threatening, there's this whole thing that the Biden administration is doing right now, where they're talking about, we've threatened them with secondary sanctions if they supply military, hardware to Russia. I think that's a complete misread of how you should be dealing with Xi and the regime right now. You don't threaten them publicly. Maybe you talk to them privately in conversation, but don't blast it all over the airwaves. So this is what we're doing. I think they're doing it. I don't know why. Maybe just to look tough.
Do you think that is what's that a function of? Like who's pulling?
And I agree with that. That would be much more professional, is not to put out that in public for them to hear that information in terms of what the gameplay is, instead of exposing all your cards that you're holding. And that's specifically what this administration does time and time again.
Those strings. Is that the intelligence agencies? Is that Biden's administration themselves? Like who's making those decisions?
Well, the intel services job would be to be providing as good intel, as well-sourced intel as possible on what the Chinese regime's thinking, right? And then that they would use that, the administration would factor that in when they're thinking about a strategy and how to deal with Xi.
So who ultimately would make those decisions, though? So if the intel agencies provide
the White House would make this.
So the White House.
The White House would make the decision, and then it would be typically. I mean, like when we're talking about China, you would see it mostly through Anthony Blinken and the State Department, right? But Blinken's getting out there and publicly berating China and threatening sanctions. Again, I'm not saying we don't talk to them privately and explain how our view is and what we want them to understand from our perspective. You do that. You'd be very clear with the Chinese. But I think
you can't have Biden do that,
right? Well, he's starting to do it. But yeah, the problem with President Biden is, I don't know that when he says something, it never really seems to be said with much conviction, right? And his actions in the past. I mean, look, if we're talking just about Putin here, Putin knows Biden's team, to some degree, because he's seen Biden, he's seen some of these cats on Biden's team during the Obama administration, right? And so if you think about when Putin's been really aggressive, it was during the Obama administration and now, right? So he feels he knows what he's dealing with. And you have to assume the Chinese do the same assessment. But I guess my point being is the Xi is doing a daily risk gain calculation in terms of their relationship with Russia. And they're saying, okay, is it still in our best interest? And as soon as it's not, from Xi's perspective, in China's self-interest to maintain, sort of this notion of closer ties with Russia, then he'll back off. And again, I think he views it right now as an opportunity. and always, if it's an opportunity to kind of poke at us, he'll take it.
I have this screenshot that someone sent me of the way the people on the left were talking about the Ukraine situation before the war. I'm gonna send this to you, Jamie.
Yeah, I don't think he shows it, but it's funny. But it's so true here.
This is one of the things that's so weird, is that they were very disparaging of Ukraine, and they were talking about the massive corruption of Ukraine and how horrible it was over there.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden they're looking at it like they're heroes.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the same exact people.
Yeah,
this is what's confusing. This is how the West was covering Ukraine before the war. It's welcome to Ukraine, the most corrupt nation in Europe. That's Vox. A new Europe, Ukrainian president rule becomes increasingly corrupt and authoritarian. Ukrainian President Zelensky deepens alliance with the far right. And this is one of the things that, we're hearing from people on both sides, that they have a Nazi problem over there, that there's a lot of Nazis involved in Ukraine. And there was something that I saw on Facebook where Facebook allowed, I don't know this is what's so confusing about, what they call the fog of war. It's not necessarily really the fog of war. It's the fog of the distribution of information, is that we're supposed to just completely take a hard right turn or a veer away, a hard angle away from the narrative that was being pushed just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to ignore all this stuff now. And I don't know what's right and what's wrong, because there was something about Facebook allowing likes. Yeah. Facebook allows war posts urging violence against Russian invaders. Like, what?
Yeah, I know.
What
I saw that.
Fuck is that?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Well, I mean, both things can be true, right?
Right.
The Ukraine's had a serious, significant corruption problem over the years. They got a really interesting history. People should spend time reading the history of Ukraine and understanding what the troubles have been just recently, even with corruption, trying to get that under control. And it can also be true that
you gotta be careful not to say too much here.
In terms of, even so,
right.
What Putin's done is, reprehensible and needs to be properly dealt with. So it's a good example of working in the real world, right? I mean, the Saudi relationship is a good example also, right?
I was going to bring that up next.
U.S. activity with the Saudis. Or another good example is the fact that we're working with Putin's government in our ongoing negotiations with Iran, because the current administration, the Biden administration, is so keen to rejuvenate that 2015 Iran deal. And so while we're doing all of this, while we're calling him a war criminal, and we're providing, we just provide another aid package full of AT-4s and javelins and stingers and helmets. Helmets always a good thing. We're also working with them to try to negotiate this deal. So we're using what we refer to now as a war criminal as our liaison with the Iranians to try to strike a deal with the Iranians, or to get them back on board and into this deal. And people look at that, and rightly so, are thinking, what the fuck? But it's how it's always worked, right? It's a very pragmatic approach, I suppose, in one sense. And you can't say, okay, I'm going to be the leader of the free world and only do things by emotion, or only do things if they're morally, the high ground, right? I'm never going to deal with people who are, reprehensible at times. Yeah.
So. One of the things that's happening now is because of social media, and
I'm going to fast forward this part because
there's so much access to information.
This numerous times. So go to this next minute mark is where I had
they've got to invest in the future. I'm not here to shill for oil companies, but I'm just saying this is how it works.
Right.
And so if they're told there's no future in long-term investment, well, guess what? Okay, they're gonna start shutting production down. They're not going to invest in new opportunities. And so that's going to have an impact. And I think what the Biden administration did that was incorrect was not the simple thought that energy in today's world equals national security. It is a top national security priority.
Yep.
Right? There's no doubt about
Correct.
it. And so
Correct.
therefore, if you think energy is a critical national security concern in this world, therefore, it's not unreasonable to think we should do everything possible to achieve or get as close as possible to achieve energy independence. That should be our plan. You can still, at the same fucking time, you can invest in alternative forms of energy. You can do both at the same time. But there seems to be this thought with some folks that no, you can't do that. You got to throw all in on alternative energy sources and fuck the fossil fuels. Well, you can do both, and eventually, yeah, hopefully one day we get there, yay, green energy. But it's not going to happen probably in our lifetimes. Yeah.
It's a long process.
Yeah.
So how much have we decreased our reliance on energy that the United States produces?
I don't know. I don't know the exact numbers, but look, we've been pulling in on a daily basis from Russia, as an example, 670,000 barrels a day. Right. I mean, if you think about, our concern is how do we make that up? Could we make that up by not having not having put our boot on the neck of the energy business here? Again, not saying we shouldn't be pursuing other. Good God, I mean, you can. I keep going back to this. We can multitask. We have that ability. In fact, oil companies spend a great deal of money researching alternative fuels because it's a capitalist motive. They understand that if they can get there, they're going to make money, right?
Right.
And so it's like battery development. Whoever develops the next best, smallest battery is going to win. So, it shouldn't be that hard to assume. But the problem is we send people to Washington who then just throw shit on the wall, right? Because it seems like a popular thing to say, right? And so the next thing you know, we're talking about, let's do a windfall tax. Maybe and now there's some talk about we should, price cap. How about we cap the price of gas so that we're going to set price controls, and so you can't charge any more than this. And we tried that. Right. And the problem is some of these people that are up in Washington, D.C. aren't old enough to remember. But in the 70s, right, they had price controls on gas, which we also had long lines for gas, and we had all sorts of problems.
Correct. And what no one specific, I think Florida may have. I think they're the only one that actually repealed the state gas tax for a little bit, just to provide a little bit of a cushion, a little bit of a buffer for the time being. But his approach and talking about energy, I think is spot on. Instead of, it's a key to, national security. And we've seen this numerous times, and we should have been ahead of this, but we weren't, because of the entire narrative that's being pushed with the green agenda that's getting ready to take place. I mean, it's crazy, some of the narratives that are being put out there right now, where they're saying, hey, take a bus instead. That'll, help save some gas money. All these things, turn your thermostats, way down, instead of coming up with ideas. And now they're talking about penalizing, the corporations who are, and again, yeah, there's going to be some greed take place. Yeah, there's probably, gas stations and individuals who are, taking advantage. We saw the same thing with the inflation numbers, right? Where a lot of the inflation, the key indicators were, I can't remember to the tune of how much dollars that the coffers had been increased in the corporations in regards to the profits. And I see it continuously. I see the price changes. Literally, you can go into some of these retail stores and you can look at the price changes on a daily basis and see the increase in pricing that's taking place. And the labor market, but in particular with energy, I think that the biggest thing that is really that should have been included in this conversation is just the current administration's approach. That, listen, in the numerous conversation that, hey, listen, we're going to bankrupt coal, we're going to do all these things to energy. That's not what investors want to hear. If those oil companies are going out there and they're raising funds, and everyone knows through the fracking process, there was a significant amount of money that was lost, a lot of loans that defaulted. The last thing that the banks and and lending institutions and then investors want to look at is a policies that are not favorable to that industry. I mean, it's pretty common sense. There's not that much complicated about it. But I think he did a pretty good job of going through and specifically talking about the different all options and above. And I believe we can find a way to to look at the environment but yet at the same time not continuously and to kill a significant industry, and at the same time the large price increases are going to devastate the middle class and the working poor. Fast forward to the next section that I want to jump into in this conversation. So let me add this here. Hopefully the audio is coming through just fine. If someone could just give me a thumbs up and just make sure that the audio is coming through, and I'm fast forwarded to this next portion. It's ready to go.
So it's a strange fucking world.
What do you think Putin thought was going to happen? I mean, when you're driving these tanks down, many miles on a straight road where everybody knows where they're coming from, everybody knows where they're going.
Right.
Why did he think that would just be a way to do, or why do these generals or whoever is in charge of making these military plans, why did they think that was a viable option to just drive these convoys of military vehicles and personnel carriers
and fuel tanks or tankers well, I'm sure that's the same question Putin probably asked his generals before he let them go.
Is he letting them go, or is he like putting them in the same place where they put Jack Ma for a few months?
Yeah, exactly. I think he's putting someone under house arrest. It's a very good question. The Russian military was supposedly going through a professionalism, sort of this upgrade over the past decade and a half or so. It doesn't appear to have worked very well. He's got a lot of apparent issues with the training, certainly experience, right? They got a lot of young people who got into the military. They haven't been in combat. They certainly haven't been in urban combat, which is the most fucked up situation. And so he's dealing with a lot of issues. But you're right. You would have imagined that the planning, and I think that's one of the reasons why you're starting to see, again, if we can believe a lot of the anecdotal evidence, why you're seeing this starting to bubble up a little bit through the command structure and through the elite. And we have to hope that continues, because ultimately, what's going to get them to back off is, unless there's some miraculous peace deal, because he finally says, fuck it, we're not going to win, is sort of the Russian population, the elites, and the military command basically finally just saying enough's enough. This is too fucked up. We can't back this horse anymore. And maybe we get there. It's probably not going to get there anytime soon, but it's one of the things we should be doing is just driving information into the Russian population, right? Giving them the visuals, not propaganda. All we got to do is show them what's happening, right?
What do they have access to now?
State-run media. Yeah, state-run media. He's shut down really access to everything else. I mean, so they're getting and a decent population of Russia, the older population certainly.
So hopefully everyone sees where he's going with this conversation, right? He's talking about a change, a coup. In terms of the information getting into the Russian people enough where they out Putin. It's very clear in that. I mean, I guarantee you that's one of the the objectives through this in this time period that's taking place. But I mean, listen, like in terms of boots on the ground reporting out of the Ukraine, the information that's coming out. There was a great conversation on the Gray Zone. I think I put the link up in Discord. Wonderful conversation of someone who I think very much kind of assessed in terms of the direction that's happening there, and the consensus is the same that I've heard from a lot of people, is that there was a great concern for that they didn't want to wipe out the Ukraine. They didn't want to destroy the infrastructure. They wanted to minimize the loss of life, and that's why this is a very different. I think Pepe Escobar said it the best. He said that. Listen, we may not know the strategies that were deployed, that this is very atypical type warfare that's taking place that maybe we've never have witnessed before. And for anyone to try to assess like next moves and what's happening, nobody really knows. Nobody does, because I think that those things it's not public knowledge, and nor should it be in terms of what the strategies are taking place. But to just identify and again, Joe talks a lot about stuff, UFC and everything, but I think there was a strategic reason why they put those convoys there, with probably loaded with humanitarian supplies that were listed there. And, we get reports time and time again that that's taking place because they know that there's going to be some food shortages and everything that are currently happening in Ukraine. But I think it was pretty much a kind of a disconnect. But again, like anyone to, I completely agree. And I think it was in Twitter. If you're not following Pepe Escobar on Twitter, you should, as well as London Paul. Just great information coming forth. Not political at all. Primarily talking about the events unfolding. But for anyone to try to war game this and to try to do a preemptive type next move, I think it's nearly impossible. So again, let's jump back into this conversation. Let me go ahead and forward it to the next point that I have bookmarked here. I wrote these down. What I did was, as I listen to these things, I just do a screenshot of when the discussions are taking place. That was the best way I could think to do it, because I tried to save it like on the timestamp, but with the way that the Spotify works, it kept resetting my play time on this. Okay, so here's the next portion. So let's bring this in. Let's jump to the chat room real quick. Again, want to thank you all for tuning in. Yes, I see the yeah. That's a good point. I don't know. Putin was Kissinger's pick. General B was a nationalist that was going to clean out Putin and the oligarchs. He died in a helicopter accident. Mojo's in the house. Matthew as well. Texas Tom Payne. Do people honestly believe that a country that's 12 time zones large and prepped for a escalation land war was unable to maintain a 200-mile supply? Yeah. Gonzalo Lira, 7 time zones. I wouldn't have guessed. Hi all. What's up? Mac Trucks in the house. What's up? So good to see you. So let's continue this conversation. I'm going to add it into the next portion of the conversation. Again, this is covered under fair use. We're discussing JRE 1793 with Mike Baker and Joe Rogan.
But how do they boost their morale? How do they get them excited about? Because it seems like if we were going to go to war with Canada, right, and we decided we're going to invade Toronto, and
we should invade Montreal first. It's a much nicer city.
I like both places.
They're both nice. I shouldn't say anything about that. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of both places.
Yeah,
but that's bad because Montreal was never a part of America, right? Maybe like if we invaded fucking Alaska, whatever, you know what I mean? It's something along those lines, something crazy where they're just a few decades ago were our countrymen.
Right.
That's got to be a very strange ask for these Russian soldiers.
And there's a lot of stories that have come out about statements from some of the captured Russian soldiers talking about how they didn't even realize they were doing anything other than a training exercise, long-term training exercise on the border, and then the tanks start rolling in. So yeah, it's one of those things in terms of intel. How bad is the morale? Well, we don't really know. We have to piece together everything we can and make a determination about that. There's a lot of talk right now because it's a good narrative to say that the Russian military is collapsing because these soldiers they're young, they're disheartened, they're walking away. But that may be true, but it doesn't take into account what they're still willing to do, right? And what they're willing to put up with, and what the command staff is willing to do and instruct them to do. So, everything has to be taken with a bit of a grain of salt. But yeah, it's look, you look at the history of these two countries. I mean, go back to, who is it? Abramovich, Roman Abramovich, who owns Chelsea Football Club. He's handed over control of it now because I think he reads some of the writing on the wall in terms of his assets. But I think his parents, if I'm not mistaken, I think Abramovich's parents still live in Ukraine.
Jeez.
Right. So he comes out and says, this is not a good idea. We shouldn't be doing this. He's talking from a very personal place, right? Putin looks at that and goes, fuck you, buddy. So you can see why there'd be anger there, right? Yeah. But, and also it's fascinating. It's always more complex than what we hear. It's always more complex than the headlines or the stories. It's all this interconnectivity and the reason why the reason why people are doing what they're doing. It's fascinating shit.
It is fascinating shit. But like one of the things that fascinates me about the oligarchs is why are they going after those guys? Are they going after those guys because they have influence over Putin, and that the more those guys get their money taken away and their assets taken away and get their bank accounts seized, that this will somehow or another make these incredibly wealthy people
Okay, I completely messed that part up. It's not what I had hit the button for, but there's a part of this discussion where they specifically talk about Putin's understanding of the United States and of America. And Mike was completely disconnected. You know, he made it sound like Putin had never studied or researched anything about the United States. And you know, we covered this numerous times, not only on Rogue but also on the Gadfly. And that was this. Let me add this to the stream. That was this, where you know it was at the Valdai Club where Putin gave a very extensive speech about his vision, about you know the 21st century, the values in the state, and things going forward. And within that speech, he pretty much blasted out the cancel culture, also the gender fluidity, the you know the crimes against humanity. He very much understood the difficulties here in the United States. He also and I don't know why that Mike and Joe didn't talk about this specifically, but Joe was talking about how it's kind of messed up because we only have an administration that sits in for 8 years at a time. Four minimum 4, but potentially 8, and then they're out. Where and Joe specifically said, I don't want to take his words out of context, but said, I'm not advocating for the China model or the Russia model. But Putin specifically said that. He said that's one of the problems with the West in America is that that the policies that are mandated are not long term. They're very short term, and that's so true within here that we see. So once there's an effort to maybe move to, let's just say, for example, energy independence, that that the current administration gets to manage that and put those policy forth, but it's so short term. If they once they're out, then it changes directions and it pivots from there and it's gone. So for Mike to come out and say that Putin doesn't understand America and the West and some of the challenges that we face as a country, that's not accurate. It just again and if he's a CIA intelligence officer, I'm not sure where he's getting his information from, because again, this information that we have access to is public knowledge. You don't require any type of security clearance, but he does understand those things, and they have for a long time now. So we completely understand that. The second part that I completely missed over that wasn't bookmarked right was talking about military technology, and they talked about how that the MiGs. Joe specifically asked Mike and said, "Hey, what about this story about the MiGs that we're going to be transferred over? Who has the technology advantage, and would there be some benefit of getting those MiGs there?" And Mike was like, "Well, it would really fall back to training," which I'm not discounting that. Yes, you would want to make sure that whoever got those MiGs was capable of flying them, but everyone knows clear as day that those MiGs that they're in possession, that Poland's in possession of, are so outdated that the newer technology that's been developed would completely, wipe those MiGs out within no time at all. And in fact, the billionaire astronaut who owns a MiG-29 publicly said that, look, the jets wouldn't help Ukraine much. He specifically went on record. Jurek Isaacman, billionaire and astronaut, maybe the only American to own. Yes, for sure, that'd be kind of cool to own one of those. Isaacman, who made his fortune a payment processing company he founded as a teen, was able to have to purchase the MiG, and quote unquote, on a purely technical level, I don't know how the good could outweigh the bad of bringing in those MiG-29s. Isaacman said, are people thinking through the implications? He said the Russians could eliminate the jets from the battlefield in a single shot. What a momentum swing that would be for Russia. He added, what a morale boost it would be for them. And it's been publicized for now. The Russians could just be waiting for the moment those jets come across the border. Kiev has also been pleading with the West to close the no-fly zone, close the sky over Ukraine. Obviously Zelensky's been asking that for a long time now. So this is public knowledge. I'm not sure why he, and Joe asked specifically regarding military technology and advancement. And and he led to the advancement and talking about how China is stealing all our technology and everything. But I'm not sure how China was able to leap forward and Russia was able to leap forward in terms of hypersonic technology and pretty much kind of leave, us in the dust trying to figure that out. But again, I just kind of crazy. So not sure why Mike, again, that just, like I said, and I'll say it one more time at the end of the show, but I just think that he is a plan. I think that the alphabet agencies, the intelligence agencies understood that, hey, listen, we have news anchors, we have people that are running these things. However, the momentum is swinging away from the legacy media in terms of influence, in terms of trust, in terms of what people are believing. We need to strategically implant people into the conversation, produce these TV shows like that Mike's in, get them on JRE to get the ideas of what we want the American people to hear and to believe. So I hope Rogan listens to that and considers that, and then maybe have someone in that with a counter, opinion, to it. Maybe even a debate platform and have Mike and Pepe Escobar or the Saker on to openly debate some of these topics. Because let's face it, Rogan has a huge audience, big platform that they're hearing this information. Some of it's accurate. Some of it to me is disinformation. But I think it was just that important to kind of break down this conversation. I'm going to forward to the last timestamp I have of this conversation. And hopefully it's the correct one. It may or may not be because I'm not sure why it didn't. Let's see here. Biden to Zelensky. Let's see here what Raven said. Biden to Zelensky. Fight to the death. Biden to Joe. More pudding, please. That's awesome, Raven. That's so accurate. Text campaign. But CJ, we all know that Putin's a commie and KGB assassin. Why would such a knuckle dragger study America? Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Why do it? Right. He's probably playing his Xbox game. That's hilarious. Okay. So this is the next portion of the conversation that I had bookmarked. And let's go ahead and hit the play button.
Increasing ties to Russia, efforts by that regime at the time to back away from the West, and it was a kind of a remarkable series of events, but it was a popular uprising, which is remarkable, right, in a sense, and that's what you would like to think possibly could happen in Russia, where people are saying, no, you know what, we don't want to return to the breadlines here. We don't want to be isolated like this. We went through that long enough. We didn't think that's the way Russia was going.
But Ukraine didn't have an established ruler like Putin, who's been in there since '99. Like, how would anyone outside of an assassination, how would anyone take over? I mean, so he must be terrified of assassinations or extremely paranoid at this point. Putin.
Yeah.
Because he's done it.
Yeah. There's he's done you think about it.
Allegedly.
I think Sergei Skripal, I think Litvinenko, I think Navalny, I think they'd all think it's more than alleged, but they he's never had a problem with reaching out and terminating political opponents wherever they happen to be. Right. And
we don't do that here in the United States. We don't do that.
Method's always been poison. Right. And so polonium-210 with Litvinenko. And so I think he's increasingly isolated, which causes problems for us, because you do have to then figure out, okay, what information is he getting? How good is the information he's getting? And is he making decisions based on sound intelligence and information? Is he getting, somewhat paranoid? And there's been some reporting that, he's fired a lot of his staff and brought in.
Who the fuck does he bring in?
He brings in other people. I have no idea. His cousins, it's his kids.
That's what Trump did, right?
Kids were.
Did Trump have food tasters? I don't know. Maybe he did.
Jared and Ivanka.
Supposedly, according to some reports, he's got people tasting his food now before he eats it. So that kind of gives you an indication. But you look at this rally he just held. It was the largest football stadium they've got, and you look at it, and if you didn't know better, it's an old Soviet-style rally, or it looks like sort of something North Korea would.
I want to pause it there for a minute. I haven't. What's the correct word I'm using here? I don't. There's a theory. Everyone has seen the pictures of Putin when he's dealing with certain foreign dignitaries, how some are, real close to him and shaking hands. But then there's been meetings, I think, with Macron and someone else where there's this huge long table, right? There's like 20-foot table that's distancing there. And someone made a speculation. Well, maybe it's because of the particular type of jab that they may or may not have had, and concerns in regards to that. Again, that's just a theory that's thrown out there, but they're getting ready to jump into the conversation in regards to this big rally that Putin had, and at least he can pan away and show a huge audience, unlike when the current administration has it and there's nobody there. I mean, it's just insane. But let's continue this conversation, and it's almost I think I have one more bookmark and that's it. Yeah, everyone's seen that. Yeah. I'll pause it. Joe goes in to talking about his tangent about like the long form conversation versus short form. Oh, you couldn't hear anything on that? No, CJMC, we cannot see or hear anything. Oh, did I not add it to the stream? You're kidding me. Was I sitting there listening to all that by myself? Oh, I bet I didn't. Okay, my bad. Nope. Okay, here we go. I was sitting there listening to it by myself. Here we go. Let me go back to it. Sorry about that, guys. Here we go. It's in the stream now, correct? Yes, it's in the stream. Okay, here we go.
That was supportive of Russia. And so that had a lot to do with it as well. The current government,
how's it sound now?
Zelensky, is not inclined and hasn't been inclined, right? And they don't view themselves as controlled by the Russians. In fact, Zelensky was put in place because for the very reason that they were going to, advance the ball with the West and, create more of a relationship there. That's what the people wanted. That's why they threw out the last president, and because they didn't like the fact that they were getting closer and closer to Russia. So,
and the last president was, you said they were waiting to reinstate this guy?
Well, that was a possibility because there was, intel that he'd moved to Minsk, right? So he was going to be sitting in Belarus waiting. And then once they got to Kyiv, they just, he shows up. And somehow, if that was the case and that was who they were going to pick, I mean, it does seem insane that you're going to install the previous guy who was thrown out. But, again, if you think that their assessments were so bad, maybe that was the case.
So in 2014, what went down? Like, what was the rebellion?
It literally was a massive uprising from people. It was just it would started as street protests over over a handful of things: corruption, ties to Russia, increasing ties to Russia, efforts by that regime at the time to back away from the West, and it was a kind of a remarkable series of events, but it was a popular uprising, which is remarkable.
Oh,
right,
my
gosh. And that's what, that's what you would like to think possibly could happen in Russia, where people are saying, no, you know what, we don't want to return to the breadlines here. We don't want to be isolated like this. We went through that long enough. We didn't think that's the way Russia was going.
But Ukraine didn't have an established ruler like Putin, who's been in there since '99. Like, how would anyone outside of an assassination, how would anyone take over? I mean, so he must be terrified of assassinations or extremely paranoid at this point. Putin.
Yeah.
Because he's done it.
Yeah. There's he's done yeah.
Wow. The level of disconnect there, not to call it a coup or a color revolution, to say that it was spontaneous uprising, right? Spontaneous popular uprising. Yeah, it's always spontaneous. It happens everywhere, right? These things take place. There's no Western influence within these regime change and these things that take place. Apologize for not bringing in the audio there for a minute from the podcast, the discussion. The next portion of it, again, is the last segment that I had bookmarked. And that's in regards to the media, and they have some important points that they take, they specifically discuss. But one of the things that I think is kind of missing from the conversation in terms of the trust that's taking place, and this is in part, some of the conversations you can have people, anywhere, and because you hear it all the time. Well, there's so much just disinformation, and I believe disinformation comes from both sides. Let's not be naive. But first and foremost, through this resolution that needs to take place is, and I say this continuously, and I will always state this, is that we need to be concerned with the loss of life and humanity, and that's the struggle with this, and there's a lot of innocent potential people that are directly in harm's way, and that's got to be addressed, right? We've got to reach, that point. But in terms of that disinformation and building trust, right? Building trust. Let's think about that word as a foundation. And in terms of trust, there's two names that come to mind in terms of trust, especially with the narratives that are being built. And that's, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. Right? Right. So why don't you hear the legacy media out there, Fox News, CNN? Why don't you hear them out there advocating for the release of Julian Assange? Everyone's probably very familiar that he recently just got denied by the UK Supreme Court, denial of his extradition. So it's looking pretty grim right now for Julian, that he more than likely will be extradited to the United States. So who are you going to trust here? You're going to trust, the legacy media who won't report about what's happening with Julian, who won't actually go out there and advocate for his release. How about Edward Snowden? And everyone knows we don't need to rehash the entire Julian Assange in terms of the information that he revealed, in terms of whether it's the corruption that occurred with our election with the DNC, or the war crimes that were committed in Iraq. There's so many different things, and there's never been a retraction, right? He's a journalist that our government is specifically targeting and going after. What about Edward Snowden? What about Edward Snowden, who came up through the NSA and the intelligence apparatus of our country, who felt so compelled whenever he was reviewing and looking at documentation, stating specifically that the spy agency, that every American was being surveyed and surveilled and complete, whether it's our emails, it's our phone conversations, our internet, browser history, all those things were being captured, and how it was unconstitutional, and it is, and felt so compelled and put that out there. Where's he residing? Where is he living? He's in Russia. He's in Russia. So think about those things, like when people talk about, about whether it's the media and who to trust and things that are happening. It's just crazy. Yeah, Tom, the credibility, like about your dude saying it was grassroots coup. I'd never rag on CJ like that. He's a good. Oh, somebody did. Okay. I thought it was talking about 2 minutes of my CJ. Yeah, sorry about that. The audio didn't come in. But again, I really think there needs to be a point where Joe Rogan does need to have some difference in an opinion. He's, I think in the last probably 6 months, I think it's his Mike Baker's second visit to Jerry, and I'm sure that he probably brought him in because of the crisis in Ukraine, right? He's like, hey, I want to get somebody that knows what the hell's going on. Well, quote unquote, knows what the hell's going on, versus the the narrative that's being put out there. So again, just crazy things that are happening right now. And again, we just need to pray for a peaceful resolution through this. I don't think that's going to happen. The other part of the conversation with the Jerry that they should have talked about, was the monumental shift that's occurring with the SWIFT and the banking and the finance. That's major changes are unfolding. Nearly every day now, we have another country coming forth and saying, "Hey, look, we're not going to be that that we're going to do trade, we're going to do whatever and we can to bring this." So again, just want to thank you all for tuning in. This has been a CJ OMC Open Mic Cast, and specifically talking about this is the first. This is the inaugural reaction video. They will get better. I'll get better at the technology side of managing that. I'll make sure to do a better job of bookmarking. I need to figure out a way to do that. Maybe go through the podcast and hit record whenever there's something there, and then that way I don't have to fast forward and go back and forth. So I'll get it figured out regardless. But want to thank you all for tuning in. If you could do me a favor, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's CJOMC. Also, you can follow my Twitter handle, which is @producer CJ1. And then specifically, everyone's familiar with the work that I do with V, the Guerrilla Economist, over at roguenews.com, and also with London Paul and Ken Shurkin Jr. over at the Gadfly. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Peace, love, prosperity, be safe, and everyone enjoy your evening. Take care and God bless.